2004 at Virginia Tech. And today we'll be talking about resume and interview tips. I have had, while now I am a professor in Seattle University, this has been my new job for a year. Before then, I spent a lot of time in industry, especially big tech. And so I'm going to move on to the next. Yeah, there we go. So after I got my master's degree from Virginia Tech, I joined Microsoft, and I was there for 11 years, moved then to a startup called Hearsay Systems, where I worked for a couple of years, then followed my passion again and joined Amazon Alexa, where I got to work with some old colleagues from Microsoft, and finally spent 4 years at Meta, or previously known as Facebook, as an engineering manager. So all in all, that was 17 years in industry. After 17 years, I decided I wanted to try something new. I wanted a little bit of a break, and that's what I'm doing right now, teaching computer science. So this quarter, I'm actually teaching data structures and fundamentals of databases. Yay! Which I love. I'm really enjoying myself. I might go back to industry one day. I don't know. Right now, I'm really enjoying teaching. But anyhow, you're here to hear about resume writing tips and about interview tips. And so I'll focus on my time in industry and the many of these years that I was in industry. I was a hiring manager. I was both interviewing candidates, attending campus fairs, career fairs, doing interviews on campus, doing interviews at the office, and learned a lot. And I've also done a fair amount of interviews myself, me being on the interviewee side. As I changed teams many times in Microsoft, I had to interview again. And when I changed companies, of course. So I can offer both sides of the experience. In all of these companies, I had different roles. I started as a software engineer, but I also tried product and program management for a while, then went back to software engineering and engineering management. Eventually, I was managing teams. I managed teams in all of these companies too. So I did go a little bit back and forth, and that is something that, career-wise, there's a lot of movement and a lot of flexibility in tech, and you can try, different core functions, as well as you can try management later on when the opportunity arises. So in terms of projects, I've also worked on a bunch of different projects. I started in authentication, then moved on to search, graphics, robotics, etc. Loved my work in speech and natural language, both in Microsoft and in Amazon. And a lot of these have the common thread of machine learning. Not all of them, but I did learn a lot of about machine learning and its applications on the job. And that was really, really fun and fulfilling to me. So that was about me. And I think that when you're considering a job, whether it's an internship or a full-time job in software engineering, there's actually several core technical roles out there. I'm just going to mention the most common ones here. Software engineer, that's the bulk of the opportunities out there. In some companies, that's a software developer. In some others, it's just software engineer. I think lately the more common term is software engineer, and abbreviated is SWE, SWE in some recruiting circles. And even within those, there's many types of software engineer. But before I go into that, another common role that people ask about is program/product management. There's a lot less of these roles, because just simply representation in a team, you usually have one PM to a number of engineers. So of course there'll be less jobs for this. The word manager here is a little confusing sometimes, because program/product managers do not manage people. They do not have people reporting to them. They are not responsible for supporting people's careers. But they manage the project or the product vision and design, etc. So that's why the term manager is there. And data science is as a role that's relatively new, and that has been growing very fast. And now most companies will have a data science as a formal hiring role that look for a specific type of individuals. And I think that if you are enrolled in a computer science degree program, these are all roles that you could apply for, but you are probably going to see a lot more availability in the software engineering roles, especially when it comes to internships or an early career openings. So within these, of course, there's different types as well, especially with software engineers, since it's such a wide field. You could specialize on front end, back end, full stack. You could also specialize on mobile applications versus machine learning versus hardware and any other field you can name or imagine. There's also different disciplines. Some software engineers focus on quality assurance or production engineering, making sure that the infrastructure is up to snuff to serve billions of customers and the like. So there's plenty of areas where you can find your passion and your home in software engineering. Program/product managers, they can be called, different companies call them different things. In Amazon, for example, there's like 4 equivalent titles for technical program manager, technical product manager. They might vary a little bit, but there's like so many titles, but it's kind of like the same role depending on which team you're at. Usually you have a little bit of a business vision as well as technical vision and everything in between. And in some cases, you might be more oriented towards the customer side of things or the business side of things. And in some cases, you'll still be very technical. Like there are technical program managers working on operating systems, for example, and they'll be extremely technical people, but they still need to manage those projects, help bridge connections between engineering and other disciplines, make sure there's good specs written, a good plan, a good strategy, a good roadmap, all those things that program managers, product managers can enable. And then this is the role that I know least about in terms of hiring, because I didn't work as a data scientist myself, nor did I hire data scientists, but I definitely work with them. So if you have more of a focus towards analytics and statistics and forecasting and data pipelines, and maybe a little bit of machine learning, also with data science, there's a big gamut of what companies might be looking for. They might be looking for the more analytical side of things, data analytics, or they might be looking more in the machine learning side of things. And it really will depend on the company, and you have to read the job descriptions very carefully to see if this role you're applying for is actually the role that you want to ideally land. So that is a quick introduction. And now the sun is setting here in Seattle, so I think my face is gonna get washed out. So just give me 1 second. All right, I'll try to get somebody to help me with the blinds so that my face doesn't disappear. Anyway, so those are 3 different core technical positions. Now you know more, hopefully, than when we started. Now, depending on where you are in your studies, you might be interested in applying for internships or full-time roles. So internships, really, if you say well, we might be a bit late about applying for internships this summer, but it can still happen. Maybe you're interested in an internship this summer because you're going back to school next fall. So that would make you an internship candidate. Or you're already thinking about internships the summer of 2024 because you still have part of your degree to complete in the fall of 2024. So that would make people candidates for internships. You might already have your bachelor's and are working on a master's or PhD program. Again, you can also apply to internships if you still have studies happening at the end of the internship. That's what most companies, again, my experience is big tech, Amazon, Microsoft, Facebook. So that's usually recruiters would differentiate internship candidates from full-time candidates, depending on whether they actually have more school to do after the internship is over. If, say, you're graduating this May/June, you would not then be a candidate for internships in the summer unless you're doing a graduate degree. And that's just because companies want to preserve those internship opportunities for people that are still in progression towards a degree. If you already have your degree, then you're a candidate for full-time employment. And so the difference between the two internships are, of course, a small period of time, usually 12 weeks during the summer, although some companies will offer winter internships or internships all year round, but the more common ones are the 12 weeks, sometime during the summer break. And it's usually a paid internship, a really well-paid internship. It usually includes relocation and housing if it's in person and you have to go to a different city to do the job. And usually there's also lots of good perks like transportation cards and fitness benefits and the like. You get to work on real projects. Internships in computer science are not school projects anymore. You do get to work on real projects. You join one of the teams. You usually have a mentor and a manager in whatever team that you join, and you will have responsibilities from day one to ramp up on whatever code base it is that your team works on, and then given small tasks to help you warm up, maybe fix some bugs, and then maybe build a feature of your own with the help of the team. And if you do well during these 12 weeks, usually the company will offer a return either to another internship, depending on where you are in your studies, or a full-time offer. And so that's how typically internships work. If you are looking for a full-time role, then usually these are entry-level roles if you're coming straight from university. And some companies will hire company-wide, and some companies will hire for a specific team. So company-wide, an example would be Facebook, that at least during my time there, we would hire engineers into the company. So when you're interviewing, you're not interviewing for a team, you're interviewing for the entire company, for a role within the company. And then you join the company and you start a process called bootcamp that lasts several weeks. And in this bootcamp process, you start taking some classes, some training, you start getting familiarized with parts of the code base, and you start helping fix bugs, and you start meeting teams, different teams internally to see which one you like, which one kind of matches your interest, your passion, where you want to go, and start talking to managers too to see which ones of the managers that have positions in their teams, which ones you find compelling. Microsoft is different, or was different. I think I'm still up to date because I have a lot of friends in these companies. They would hire you for a team. So you would interview for a specific team. You'd interview for OneDrive or for Outlook or for Azure, and even a specific team within those big divisions. And so when doing your interview, you're actually meeting people that you might end up working with, which is kind of cool. And on day one, you're assigned an office or a desk in that team's location, and your manager is in that team. And from day one, you know exactly which team you're working at. Usually when you start, you do have to ramp up quickly, but you don't do it alone. If the company has a good onboarding program, they will assign you mentors, buddies, and of course you'll have a manager and peers that will help you ramp up, that will point you in the right direction when you're just have no idea how to merge code into the branch, or you don't know where to find the wiki, or you don't know how to access X, Y, and Z. The team is there to help you. And then sometimes it happens that you don't land the job of your dreams on the first try, and that's okay. Or your dreams change. Another great thing about this field is that you have many options to move around. So after a year or more of working in your first role, if you are not happy, you should not stop looking. You should definitely look around and move within the same company to a different team. Some companies will require another interview, like Microsoft. Some companies just require mutual understanding, like Facebook. It all depends, but I don't think that an interview should stop, or fear of an interview should stop your desires to move to a team that's working on something that you're excited about. In fact, the more you practice your interviewing skills, the better, because you will always be ready for that new opportunity. So think about that when you land your first job. If after a little while you're not super happy, you always have the option of finding another one, whether it's in the same company or in a different company. So that's the difference between internships and full-time offers. The recruiting pipeline can be similar, especially for recent college graduates. So a typical recruiting pipeline will go like this. It starts with some resume submission, and the resume submission can happen in many ways. It could be that you meet a recruiter or a software engineer from the company you want to work at a career fair. That is the #1 best way of, I think, getting your foot in the door, because meeting a human face-to-face beats any of the online application option in terms of increasing your probability to make it to the next stage. So if you are studying in a wonderful university like Virginia Tech that has an awesome career fair, you have to take advantage of that. I currently work at a university that doesn't have that awesome of a career fair, unfortunately, not yet. We will one day. And so take advantage of it. Don't miss out on the career fair. Always be there. If it lasts 2 days, be there the 2 days. I don't know how long it's lasting these days. Julia can update me on that. But the career fair is a golden opportunity because you get to meet people face to face, even if it's a virtual career fair. Career fair, that still, kind of counts like face to face. You have a human being take a glance at your resume and ask you questions, and that can propel you forwards to the next stage, which can save you so much time. And so don't waste that opportunity. Attend, even if you're not interested in an internship or full-time job right away, you should attend the career fair and get used to presenting yourself to hiring managers and recruiters, and have your elevator pitch ready of what it is that you're looking for, and how you can contribute, and have a good resume. We'll talk a little bit more about how to author a resume that is easily glanceable by the person on the other side, so that they can quickly see the projects, the things that you're interested in. They can then start a conversation that's more meaningful, asking you about the project that you listed in your resume. And then you get the opportunity to quickly shine in terms of your technical skills and how you communicate those technical skills. So highly recommended, attend the career fair. If you can't attend the career fair for whatever reason, or your school doesn't have a career fair, which does happen sometimes, or the company you really want to work for does not come to your career fair, then you have to try to find a recruiter contact. I think that's the next, again, in my opinion, is the next best way to get to the next stage, to increase your probabilities to getting to the next stage. A recruiter contact, maybe a friend that already interned in that company. So ask them, hey, can you put me in touch with the recruiter you work with? Or start working your network, start building your network now, start a profile in LinkedIn, start connecting with people, and maybe you can find a connection to a recruiter through your network. But I guess friends that are already interning in a place might be the fastest way to get there. Third good way of getting a foot in the door could be a referral. So say you already have friends that are already working at the company that you want to work at, or are interning at the company this summer, and you're not there yet. Usually, even as interns, recruiters will ask interns and new full-time employees to enter referrals into usually an internal system, or email them directly to the recruiter, because these referrals are, again, a great way for recruiters or hiring managers to find signal in the noise, right? So referrals are very appreciated internally, and you can always, again, contact your friends for a referral, and that will definitely put your resume at the top of the list. And last, the least likely way you're going to get to the next stage is by just submitting an application online. And the reason is because there's hundreds of thousands of applications being submitted every day to these systems. And it's really, really hard to make it just the numbers. The numbers are just against you at that point. So don't just rely on submitting applications through websites. Really try the other three methods here, especially attending a career fair. I think that's the fastest way to get to the next stage. And what is the next stage? The next stage would be typically a technical phone screen, or if the company is doing on-campus interviews, they might invite you to do a quick interview right away, like say the next day, after they meet you in the campus fair, career fair. So the contents are usually very much the same. It will be a technical interview. So you will be asked to solve a problem and write the code for that solution. And it should be working code. Maybe it's not syntax perfect, but it should be good working code. In the case of a technical phone screen, you usually have a shared notepad of sorts where you can code and the interviewer can see your code on the other side. It could be a video phone screen, or video screen as well. On campus, when I did on-campus interviews, I actually wrote my code on paper. They had little legal pads. And so be comfortable writing code by hand without typing. Again, the syntax doesn't have to be 100%. You don't have to remember all the libraries and all the methods of the libraries on all the APIs. You can say, I know that there's an API that do this. Can I use it? And can I name it this? Because I don't remember the name. And then the interviewer will say yes, no, depending on what the problem is at hand. And so get used to practicing how to solve problems and code on paper, on a white screen, on a whiteboard. Sorry, my words are failing me. So that's a technical phone screen. If you do well there, you will get to the next stage, which will be a full interview loop. For internships, this tends to be shorter. For full-time opportunities, this tends to be longer. For internships, what I've seen, typically the denominator is a couple of additional technical interviews and maybe one behavioral interview. But for full-time, we're talking about 5 to 6, maybe even 7 interviews sometimes, depending on the company. And the majority will be technical interviews. Again, more problems, more coding. And the behavioral interview tends to be more about how you deal with challenges, conflict, presenting examples of how you might have dealt with some of these difficult situations. What is your philosophy in terms of growth and other, empathy and other things that would make you a good team player, because the software we build nowadays is always built in a team. So you need to be a good team player. If you do well in your full interview, you get an offer. Congratulations. You might get multiple offers. Congratulations. This is a great, a great state to be in if you get to that point, and then it becomes a different conversation how you evaluate offers and what you pick. But we're not going to talk about that today. So again, and then of course, maybe you start the job and you get the mentors and the manager that I talked about earlier. So first things first, step one in the pipeline is your resume. And in order to communicate effectively and efficiently, I'm going to give you some of my tips. You take what you want, but of course, this is not rules that should never be broken. These are just guidelines. And these are guidelines that, being on both sides, writing a resume myself, as well as being a hiring manager that reads through lots and lots and lots of resumes, or attends a career fair and has to glance at dozens, if not hundreds of resumes in a very short amount of time. This is what I'm looking for. An objective. A lot of people skip this because it means extra work, and I know that, but do your best to personalize the objective for your resume, at least for the top N companies that you that you care about. I'm not saying, if you're applying to 100, I'm not saying write 100 different objectives, but maybe you have your top 5 in that list of 100. Then take the extra time to craft a personalized objective for those companies you really, really, really want to work for. What should be in the objective? 1 or 2 sentences that describe what is it that you are looking for? What are you interested in? One example that I love to use is a person that has a good experience as a backend engineer, but would like to learn about machine learning. So you can say that in your objective. Hey, I'm looking for a backend engineering position in a machine learning team so I can learn more and maybe one day be a machine learning research scientist myself. That's a great objective. It tells me, hiring manager, that very usually may have mixed teams, right? I in fact used to manage a team that had 50% backend engineers and 50% machine learning research scientists. It tells me you're perfect for my team, and I'm going to fight for you. I'm going to make sure you get an interview, and I'm going to want to meet you, right? And so that objective can really open doors for you. Now, you don't want to close doors either. So that's why you want to personalize that objective depending on the company. If the company you're applying does not even have machine learning engineering teams, then you wouldn't put this objective there, because they would be like, oh, they're not right for us. We don't have machine learning teams, so they are not going to want to work for us. So let's not interview them. So that's why personalizing the objective is important. And it might sound strange to some folks that I'm asking for what you're looking for. This shows what you're passionate about. What are the things, the opportunities that are making you particularly interested in this job right now? And I want to hear about it as a hiring manager, because it means that if you're a good match for my team, that you're passionate about the things that we do. And that's going to mean you're going to be more engaged and more happy working in a team like mine. So it does, I think, increase your chances of getting noticed to have a well-crafted objective, talking about the things that you're passionate about or you're looking for in a specific company. I'll show you some examples later. Education, I like to see this at the top. I know in some resumes it ends up at the bottom. I like to see it at the top because when I'm visiting universities, I want to know when this person is going to graduate. So that I know if we're talking about an internship, if we're talking about a full-time position, and I can give them more information that's appropriate for where they are in their studies. So that education at the top should have a very clear expected graduation date that jumps out of the page. Oh, this person's going to graduate in 2025. Okay, May or June 2025. Then I know what I'm dealing with, what kinds of questions I can ask, what kinds of questions I cannot ask yet. Relevancy as coursework is also nice to list in the education section. So if you've already done data structures, put it in there, because that means you're ready for higher order coding assignments. Or if you are looking for a specific role and you already took the databases course and the web programming course, great, put them in there, because that tells the recruiter and or hiring manager that you already have the skills to do some of the jobs that they might be hiring for. So that's why relevant coursework, computer science coursework should be there. Again, that's just so that we have an idea of where you might land, especially when applying for an internship. Do not put all of your courses. That's again, we have to find the right sweet spot between detail and too much detail, right? Enough detail and too much detail. Then experience. This is the part where most students struggle, because usually they think they don't have relevant experience to share in their resume, yet they feel that they've been focusing on their studies. They haven't really done a lot of computer science related jobs, maybe other jobs, but not computer science related jobs. So what do you put in the experience part? Well, include your school projects, right? If you haven't done any coding for another internship or a research project or your friend's website, then you can definitely use your projects from school, the most challenging ones, the ones that you're particularly proud of. And if you have, of course, side projects, you can also select from those. The idea is that you pick 3-ish more, 2 to 4. I will see. You'll see in the examples. It depends on how much space you have, but pick 3 projects that can show your experience in different programming languages, perhaps, or backend, frontend, full stack, or mobile app application. That way, you show more of what your breadth might be. Let me see. I see a question in the chat, so I'm going to look. Should the descriptions be bullet points or short paragraphs? I like bullet points personally. Oh, I just moved to my different. How do I move this? Sorry, my UI is not working. So bullets versus short paragraphs. It's a little bit up to you, as long as it's still brief. I like bullets because I can see it right away. And I'll show in the examples how each project has, if it has a heading with a clear title and a date, you should always have a date, because again, this tells me of your progression, right? Like, oh, 2 years ago you did this project, and a year ago you did this project. And I can see how maybe the first one was a little bit more basic, but the second one was a little more challenging. I can see that you're making progress towards grander projects. Great, that's good. And then a couple of bullets about what was challenging about that. What makes you proud about this project? If you worked in a team, which sometimes happens even with school projects, make sure you're really clear about what was your personal contribution, because you don't want to appear like you're trying to get credit for somebody else's work. That would be a very bad first impression to make with a recruiter or hiring manager. And usually the follow-up question will be like, oh, you did this team in a project. What was your role? What did you do? What did you code? Recruiters are very savvy, and they will bring you to the lower level possible until you're explaining how you synchronize your C++ sockets to make the communication work. That they want to hear that. So they will do their best to bring you down to a very full level of detail about the work that you did in the project. And there's also very useful to have a little section that talks about which programming languages, and you should definitely rate your proficiency. We're not all geniuses and are experts on every language we've ever touched. That's never true. But it's cool to know, hey, my Python skills are advanced, but my C++ is intermediate. Fine, nobody's judging, but it is a good, first of all, it shows you know yourself, and knowing yourself is very valuable. And second, again, it might open doors to different potential opportunities. It won't close doors. Don't worry that you're like, oh, but if I don't list, I don't know. What's the, I already forgot what's the version of PHP used in Facebook, but if I don't list that thing, they're not gonna want me to work there. No, we assume that you are more than capable to learn a new programming language on the go. That's what makes you a computer science student, right? You should be able to pick up new languages like nothing. So don't worry, it's not going to eliminate opportunities, but it may open opportunities. And also it shows that you know yourself. Very important. There's my PD in the background. Apologies if it's distracting. So that is what I would do in a programming languages section. And so maybe it's easier to see. Oh, I have a couple more things too before we jump to samples. And I see another question in the chat. What should I put under GPA? If you have a GPA, put it. If you don't. Some people also like to put in major GPAs rather than general GPAs. I can answer that question probably better before when we look at the samples. So one more thing, this is just side advice. And when it comes to resumes, sometimes some companies have a template, and because they see such a high volume of candidates and maybe they're gearing up to come to the campus career fair, and a little bit of structure can help them get the data they need a little bit better. So you can always ask, if you do have a recruiter contact, ask them if they have a suggested template. That way, you know that you are providing the information that company is specifically looking for. Keep it clean. I know there's a lot of fun design templates out there, but the more designy a resume, the harder it is to read. And you want to make it easy to read. And you want to make it easy to read for people that are reading hundreds of these a day. So simple is better in this scenario. Avoid busy layouts, because my eyes might be so tired that I may decide not to read that resume just because the layout is hard to parse. So don't do that to yourself. Avoid busy layouts. Even if it looks super cool, don't do it. And it should fit in one page, especially unless you have 12 years of experience already. I don't think that your resume should exceed one page. And it'll make it, again, it means that you will have to make hard decisions about what to include and what not to include in your resume. So also that makes you a thoughtful person, the kind of person I would like to interview. So make sure that what you include is actually worth it, and don't put volume just for the sake of trying to fill out the page, or don't come up with a 3-page resume because you think that's going to show that you have all this experience. Unless, like I said, unless you have more than 12 years of experience, I think you should still fit everything in one page. Don't put something in your resume. This is the avoid column. Don't put anything in your resume if you're not prepared to talk in depth about it, because they will ask you if they are good recruiters or good hiring managers, they will find that spot where you don't remember something, and it's not going to be a fun thing if they ask you about that when you're talking to them in a career fair situation and you don't know what to answer. So make sure that everything that's in your resume, it's fresh in your mind, and you remember how to talk well about it. And if you have added non-career related work experience, while it does show wonderful things about you and your work ethic, it might be taking the space of other things that you could instead include that would bring you in a better position for a computer science, an actual software engineering role or software related job. All right, so let's look at some examples. I'll exit from my presentation and go to my browser. So I will share this link with Julia. This is a website from Carnegie Mellon that I found some months ago when I was first preparing a version of this talk, and I was looking for samples, and I loved the samples that this site has. I really like that they have a sample for a freshman. So see, even if you're a freshman and have 0 previous experience, you still can write a quality resume. So they have an example for a freshman resume, overall undergraduate. So maybe this encompasses more the sophomore and the juniors, a senior sample resume, a graduate sample resume that actually has some focus in a specific field. So human-computer interaction in this case, and another, there's 2 graduate level resumes. So you can go to this website and pretty much look at all of them and make, and get guidance of what your resume I think should look like. So let's look at the freshman resume. So this applicant's name is Coco Touch, tongue in cheek. And look, they have an objective at the top. It's wonderful. It tells me right away what it is that they're looking for. This one's a little vague, but they're freshmen, so I guess that's okay. I would definitely like it to be a little bit more specific than just, I want to use my problem skills. So if you can be more specific, that would be better. Their education right at the top. And I see what their expected graduation date is going to be. This is in the past, sure. They haven't updated this in a while, but I immediately know this person, oh, they're going to graduate in 2 years from now. I know what our conversation should be about. They also have their high school GPA. You can leave that out, but you're a freshman. So if that's all you have and you want to show them, if you have a 4.0 GPA, hey, put it in there, right? That's a good thing to have in there, but optional, completely optional from my perspective. Coursework, okay, since they're early on, it is important to me as a recruiter or hiring manager to see what relevant coursework they've already completed, to see if they have enough of what I need for them to do well in my internship, right? So this is good that they listed relevant coursework, and they already have a project. Yes, I love this. So there's a project. It was a programming homework. Totally valid. Do not think that you cannot include your homework or your coursework projects. You definitely can. And this was an adventure game, and it tells me what it is. Graphical interface in Python, very nice. It could describe even one more sentence about what was particularly challenging about it. But 1-2 sentences, done. Other experience, they did an internship already, which is great, and they include this tutoring experience. All right. Technical skills, this is where I would list which programming languages you're familiar with and what kind of proficiency you might have. And because this is a freshman resume, they run out of things, so they've also included some activities and included some honors, and that's totally fine. But some of these things will fall off the resume once you have more projects to fill it in. I do think that the highlight of a resume for computer science students applying for software technical roles, then you should focus on the projects. The projects should be the star of your resume. So let's look at the next one. This one has a little bit more of that design. This is pushing the boundaries for me. I prefer the first much more. This is so easy to read, especially if I'm in a campus fair setting where I just get to glance quickly at the resume because I am keeping eye contact with the person I'm talking to. This first example is so much easier to read than the one that has the template, the cool template. It's still okay. Sometimes the cool template lets you fit in a little bit more information if you're having a really hard time calling down. It's a trade-off, right? Because if it's too crowded, that will make it hard to read. And again, you should really, really think very hard about what you include and what you not include. But what is okay about this template is that it's easy to get the expected graduation date in the left column, as well as the skills. Now, what I don't like about these skills here, the technical skills or programming languages, is that it's not telling me the proficiency. So I would still appreciate some proficiency rating, like Java Advanced, Python Intermediate, C Beginner. You know, that would really help me get a better assessment rather than just a bunch of keywords that don't really mean much without the proficiency pairing. And relevant coursework, this is great. Links. If at any point you think that you can organize your projects, your side projects, and even your school projects in a GitHub, and your GitHub is well organized, it should be, then by all means, add a link. Some people will go and click on it and peruse your GitHub and be like, oh, wow, this person coded this and this and that. This is pretty cool. But you have to make sure, before you include that link, you have to make sure that your GitHub is actually well organized. So don't include it if that's not the case. Include it if you've done the work and it looks good. One more question here. I am a first-year student, but I am in the Virginia Tech system as a sophomore. Can I get away as applying as a sophomore, or should I apply? Doesn't matter. It's your expected graduation date that matters. So that's usually, and how much, what kind of coursework, how much coursework you've completed of the relevancy of coursework. That's going to determine what kind of internship you are ready for. So hope that answers that question. It really, as a hiring manager, it doesn't really matter to me whether you're a freshman or a junior. What matters to me is that you have the skills you need to do well in the internship. And people will have different, so I've met juniors that haven't taken data structures yet, right? It happens. And freshmen that did it in high school. So where exactly which year you're in doesn't really figure much in the decision making. Let's see. Unless it's a very specific internship program that really cares about those things, I don't think it's relevant in general. There's another question. Should I add our bachelor's in CS? Yes, please. So good point. And we'll get that to the graduate, when we see the graduate examples, you'll see that people will have listed their bachelor's as well as their master's expected graduation date or PhD expected graduation date. That you do want to list both of them. And GPA if you're proud about it. So links. I talked about links. LinkedIn, if you have it and everything's nice. I'll let you determine what nice means. Then definitely, by all means, include it. No social media, please. And then experience here in this example, this is lovely. They included an Android and web app. And this was probably done as part of school. Oh, yeah, as part of the research assistant job. Here, led a 3-person team to develop mobile and wear apps for blah. That's also great. And then there's this business golf academy. They were a social media manager, somewhat related. It's bordering in the, I may not include this, I may include this, projects. So more projects from school, likely as an Android developer, and some activities, because again, sometimes, yes, your activities, your extracurricular activities, just make it really brief. I think this is actually a bit too big for the size of the resume. They can tell a lot about you. Of course they do. And if you're proud of it, go for it, but make it brief. Make it very, very brief. Here, I think this one is also another undergrad. Yes, I think this is another undergrad. Back to the simple template. I love this template. I love things that are clean. I don't like the super busy templates. Even this one up here, which is really not that busy, is a little bit busy for me. So it's harder to read. So I think I like to stick to this regular, occupy the whole page. And yes, you might be able to fit less, but maybe that's a good thing, because that means you're going to have to think harder about what's included and what's not included. So objective at the top. Excellent. And then education at the top with expected graduation date and GPA. Very good. Selected coursework, quick list. It allows me to see what parts you're ready for, what parts you're not ready for. Coding, again, my nitpick here would be that these languages don't tell me. It's like, oh yeah, you put all the languages in there, but I'm pretty sure you're probably not an expert on all of them. So be honest and assess yourself and add the assessment. If you can say advanced and then list 3 languages, intermediate and list the many languages that fall under that bucket, and then beginner if you want to. Then experience, and another example of bulleted lists describing the experience. Here they already have internship experience, so you can spend a little bit more space, because an internship is, a meaningful project that you worked on, and so you might spend, instead of just 1 or 2 sentences describing, you actually have 4. I think that's very valid. Same thing with this student consultant job. And again, they still have projects. These might be from school or side projects. Maybe you helped a nonprofit organization. Maybe you helped a family business. You can look for those opportunities to also not just enrich your experience and put the things you learn in school to practice, but also to add to your resume. So again, dates, name of project, date, and brief description of the project. All very good examples. And look, this person who's further in their degree probably doesn't really have space for extracurricular activities. I think that's okay. It depends, right? It all depends. Here's another example with the different 2-column layout, which I don't love, but it's okay. I think what I do like about this is that they do have their projects very well defined, taking like the most highlighted part of the resume. So that's good. And I want to get to one that is, there we go. Here's a graduate level example. So they do, the bachelor's, of course, is there. It should definitely be there. And then your master's of science, your expected graduation date, and maybe selected coursework. If you're working on a thesis, what is it going to be about? Maybe you can already hint at it if you already know. That would be something I want to see, because it opens a conversation about your research, and I can ask you things about your project and get to know your technical skills through that conversation. Skills again, and experience here. This person already has a few internships on there because they're much more advanced in their studies. They still list projects. I think that's great. Don't discount your school projects or side projects. Definitely include them. And there's no extracurricular activities. They ran out of space, and I think that's okay too. So there you have it. These are some really good example resumes. And these are the ones that I would gravitate towards. They are simple. They have the information I want to see in them, and nothing more. That's very good. I think I have another question here. Should I add our bachelor's? Wait, I thought I saw that one already. Yeah, okay, so maybe there's no new ones. All right, so one quick mention back in my slides about preparing for interviews. So let's say you write a stellar resume, and you go to your career fair, you're getting the door, and now you're preparing for interviews. Prepare is the key word. You have to prepare for your interviews. If you can do mock interviews with your peers or with somebody that offers to do a mock interview for you, please do it. Make sure you know how to code using a whiteboard, using paper. An excellent book, probably you already know about it. One of my favorites, Cracking the Coding Interview. It's a great book, has lots of problems, but it also tells you a lot about this background that I'm sharing with you, like how the recruiting pipeline works, what are some of the different core technical roles that you might apply for, what are some of the computer science concepts that you might not remember that you should brush up on, because they will become useful when solving the problems that you'll get at the technical interview. There is so far I've only talked about coding interviews. There is such a thing as a system design interview. Usually we reserve these for candidates that have been in industry for a while, not necessarily coming straight out of school. But if you wanted to prepare for a system design interview, this website, educative.io, has an excellent course on it. And you don't have to pay for you don't have to have access to the paid parts of the course. Part of the course is free. I think that's enough. But if you really, really like it and you really want to pay for it, go for it. But even the free parts of the course are super useful preparing for a system design interview. For behavioral, you have to focus on stories that, and it's stories, when I say stories, it means part of your experience, past experience. You should think about times you worked in a team, in a software project. In school usually, because that's your experience, but if you've had an internship, use that as well. And think about situations where there was conflict, where you had to show empathy, where you had to show a growth mindset. Those are really great examples to have fresh, so write them down so that by the time you get to the interview and they ask you, tell me about a time you disagreed with your manager, you actually remember something. You've already thought about something, and you don't have to spend precious interview time collecting your thoughts. So even for a behavioral interview, you can prepare. And yeah, make sure that you make good friends with your recruiter, that you keep building your network. And again, prepare. And if you don't get an offer right away, don't worry. You can try again and get that offer next time. That happens. And sometimes you'll have an off day on interview day, or sometimes you'll meet an interviewer that's really intimidating and you just don't do very well. That happens. It's okay. Try again. You'll get there. So that is the end of my presentation. And I think we have time for questions, right, Julia? If there's more questions.
Yes, let's go ahead with any questions, definitely.
All right. So I can look at the chat. Let's see. Background in software development, but for masters going to data analytics and ML. That's great. That's great, because then you have, a very varied background that can make you useful in many different settings. So this is the kind of thing you should put in your objective, right? First thing for people to read, to understand your background, that, hey, my background is in this, but I'm looking for this, and this is what I'm studying right now. And then people are like, oh, okay, great. They already have these kinds of skills, and this is what they're trying to learn. Let's consider them for a role where that can happen, right? So I think that is okay. Like I said, there is a specific type of combination role that I always hunted for when I used to lead a team that had both backend engineers and machine learning engineers in it. And I always looked for the resumes or the applications where the candidate asked for ML, on the job ML exposure, knowing that they would still be working, their responsibility would still be working on what they knew, which is backend engineering. And I found some of those people to do the best in my team because they would be passionate about both sides of what our team did. They had the backend engineering chops, and then they also wanted to learn about the machine learning. So they would pair up with research scientists and learn a lot on the job, working projects together, and then slowly start trying their early stages. They would try training a model. They would learn how to do that. They will learn how to evaluate it. They will learn how to deploy it. They will learn how to evaluate it online. They will learn how to do the feedback loop, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And eventually they could do more and more of that work if they wanted to, because they were capable, and they also had a support system around them of more experienced engineers that could check their work, that could give them advice, and they would be super engaged because they wanted to learn that part of the field. And that means if a person's engaged, they're happy, and then me as their manager, I'd be happy too. So definitely include that as part of your objective, so that people know where it is that you're at and why you're looking for this type of experience. You don't have to have, of course, you don't have to have the experience in order to do an internship in that, because you're seeking to learn or to have that new experience, and that's perfectly valid. Yes, does somebody want to unmute to ask a question?
Yes. Hi, I actually at the exactly same situation as Oshi, if I pronounced it right. So I'm also in the MS program, and I don't have any experience, but I do have something else to add on. Like I see a lot of position asking for JavaScript, React, and all those front end stuff, which I want to do in the future. But I didn't do anything in my 4-year undergrad program. I mainly just do Java, C, and Python. Is it worth to learn a new language to pass their online assessment? Or if I really want to go in that field, should I take my time now? Because I have 1 more semester left until graduating. Should I take my time to learn a new programming language? Thank you.
That really is up to you. Do you want to do front end? I personally couldn't stay further away from front end. I hate front end work. Front end and me, we don't match. And maybe you don't know because you haven't done it, but believe me,
right.
Some of us are just not made for it. So you could, you know enough now, and you're in a place where you could spend a weekend and try to just do a very not super deep evaluation of like, hey, I'm going to try to learn some JavaScript and React to try to do some things here and see if I like it. And really, it'll take just a weekend. It doesn't. You don't have to spend too long to see if it is something that you find that to be cool, or something that you're like, oh no, this has zero structure. I don't know about this. I think that could be a good experiment to run. And you can learn these things on your own. I think at this point, you being a graduate student in computer science, you definitely have the skills to self-learn these things. You not even through a paid course. There's some really good sites out there to learn and pick up some of these new, front-end development skills. I think that if you enjoy backend work and you like, your Java and your C++, and that makes you happy, then stick to your guns. In fact, there should be plenty of backend engineering roles out there as well. Maybe they're not as visible as the front end ones, but we need we need backend engineers too. And
Yeah,
if that's your thing, just exploit it. Yeah.
right. Thank you. And yeah.
Yeah, I definitely have had situations, especially when I worked at a startup where I was actually, with my tiny team, we were building machine learning models to support some new features in this startup. And at some point, somebody said, "Hey, it's time to upgrade to Bootstrap 3, and your pages, you own them." And I'm like, "No, I don't. We just own backend components." And they're like, "No, your backend component shows in this web page, and so you need to update this web page." And I'm like, "No!" And I spent like a week trying to figure out how to fix it, and eventually I figured it out. But I didn't want to ever do that again. So I know myself, I don't like front end. So and it's fine. There's plenty of job opportunities out there that don't involve front ends.
Yeah.
if you don't like them. Yeah.
Yeah,
All
thank
right,
you.
we have a few, no problem. Let's see. Several gaps year before college year. Is this a serious problem? I don't think it's a serious problem. I don't think so. I don't think it is. Usually, if I'm looking at a candidate, I'm just looking at their graduation date, expected graduation date. I have no idea when you started college or if you've taken some breaks. I'm just looking at that expected graduation date so that I know if I'm going to offer you internship opportunities versus full-time. And I want to see that coursework to see what kind of skills you're bringing to the table, to see if you'll do well in my internship or you're missing something. And then I can be like, okay, you have time. You should enroll in this course before the summer. I wouldn't focus on gaps. I don't think I would detect them. Even if you're like listing me a span of projects that is, more than the usual, I probably wouldn't detect it. And if I did detect it, I wouldn't read too much into it. Everybody has a different life experience. And for several reasons, for many, many different reasons, you need to take a break sometimes from your studies and then you come back, and that's fine. Or sometimes I've had folks that graduate high school and then start working. And then a few years later decide, "Ooh, I could get a better paycheck if I had the degree. So I'm going to go back to school." And hey, yeah, I think that can be quite smart too. And I've interviewed candidates like that, and their experience, if you do have relevant experience from those gap years, listed. But if not, it doesn't really matter. I think I personally, as a hiring manager, I haven't seen other hiring managers care much about it either, or recruiters care much about it either. So I don't think that's much of a problem. Let's see. Oh, age. Yes. Do you think age is a significant factor? It's a hard question. I wish this wasn't the case, but I do think there's a lot of bias. That happens when we do interviews and in the technical field, and we're trying to learn from it and try to not have that unconscious bias be at play. And there's many things. It could be accents. I have an accent, right? It could be gender. Some people think women are not as good as men in the computer science field. They're completely wrong, but hey, they think it. And one of those people might interview you. And they might not know that they actually are having this bias. It's unconscious most of the time. They have no idea, but in their minds, deep within, they see a woman come in the door and they're already thinking, this interview is not going to go well, right? And that sucks. It's not fair. And such interviewers need education and need to realize that they're having unconscious bias. And age is a matter too. if it's a very significant, I do think that it could potentially bias people the wrong way. I'm not gonna lie. But I hope that the people you apply for, the companies you apply for, don't hire a lot of those folks with unconscious bias, and don't let them do interviews either. But it is true, it's out there, and it exists. And a lot of companies, thankfully, are doing better training with their employees so that by the time they start interviewing other people, they're aware of their unconscious bias, and they recognize it and realize that they're there to evaluate somebody's skills and problem solving, and not the source of the biases, right? So yes, that's what I have to say. And it does not apply only to age. It applies to race, it applies to ethnicity, it applies to gender and other things. So it's the real world. So it does happen. But I think it's happening less and less thanks to a lot of really good work that these companies put into training their interviewers. So that's what I have to say about that. Let's see. I have 10 years of software development background. Awesome, congrats. Abroad and first semester as CS, Masters of Engineering. Employment options in the US. Ooh, yeah. I don't know. However, yes, you could, I mean, could you get a job? Yes. Will it happen for sure? I can't say. I think that there will be plenty of, I mean, I'm sure a lot of internship, people hiring for internships would be happy to have you because you come with all this extra experience already, which means that you can hit the ground running and you know, even be extra productive in an internship. You probably wouldn't be eligible for full-time employment until you graduate and have the right visa, right? Now we're getting into visa territory. If that is something that you need, whether it's an OPT or an actual H1 visa. I'm not an expert. I did my own visa journey, and rules have changed since I did my journey. So I don't want to give you the wrong guidance, but I think you can definitely, by virtue of, if the rules haven't changed, a big if the rules haven't changed, by virtue of having a student visa, you can do an internship under that same visa agreement. So I think the answer is yes, there's opportunities, and yes, you could, you know, get those internships. And then when it comes to full-time, then it's a different type of visa that you would need to have. And focus on employers and companies that are willing to do the research on visa work. For the big companies, they already know how to do it, and they have, you know, teams of lawyers working on the thing. But smaller companies might be scared and they don't know how to do it. So don't waste your time on those smaller companies, because, you know, they're probably too scared to deal with visa issues that they just won't hire folks that need that support. So if you can focus on applying on companies that are okay with figuring out the visa process, etc., for full-time, that is. Hopefully that gives, oh no, I'm not sharing. Can I get out of here? Yes. So let's try more questions. Notice all resumes presented included a phone number. Email versus phone number. You do want to have a phone number, and it becomes useful for other reasons later. Most of the time people will use your email address. Oh, why am I keep clicking on the share? Sorry about that. Most of the time people will use email to communicate, but every now and then having that phone number is indeed useful. And if you're applying for jobs and or you're waiting on an offer or something, you probably want to pick up your phone. I know I never pick up my phone either, but when I'm applying for a job, I pick up my phone. Ooh. And sometimes recruiters do want to talk to you about, like, hey, tomorrow we're changing the schedule, blah, blah, blah. And so that needs a phone call. It cannot be done in email. So when you are in the thick of the application, schedule, answer your phone. If it's a telemarketer, you can always hang up. That would be my advice. So yes, do include your phone number. Usually every single offer I received on the phone. I don't think that's changed. I mean, eventually they follow up with the email and the document, but usually the recruiter is super happy to want to tell you, hey, you got an offer. So it's a good, thing to have a phone. I have job experience before starting my graduate program. Yes. Which section should I put the projects I work during my, yes. So that's why we have an experience and a project section. So you can really double down. If it's work experience, internship experience, you can put that in experience. And then if it's school projects or side projects, put it under projects. That kind of, and if you have enough experience that you don't want to include projects, hey, that's up to you. But yeah, that's great. I would put it under the experience section. Don't have an objective, but don't really have room to add one. Is it worth cutting to add an objective? I think yes. But you do you. The objective really helps me as a recruiter or as a hiring manager match you better with the opportunities in my company. It might also mean I might even, if I find it interesting enough, I might even create a position. So I think objectives are extremely valuable. Again, I wouldn't do them for every single company you're applying for. I would focus my energy on an objective for the companies that you consider your top 5, your top 10 at the most. Because it really can cut the clutter and tell me who you are and what you're looking for. And that I do think that the objective is valuable because of that. And you could probably cut from your resume, right? It's okay. All right, haven't figured out which field I want to work after I graduate. Front-end or back-end, okay. In this case, what should I write in the objective? I took Java courses already, and I'm taking front-end course this semester. So maybe it's not a specific technology. Maybe you're not specifically interested in front-end versus back-end. Maybe you're like, man, I like it all. But think about what is it that makes you passionate about a career in the software industry. Maybe for a specific company, even just thinking, what are the companies that you would really like to work for? Why? Is it a specific thing that company does that you would like to do, or a specific team, or so I don't know, or because of the impact, you would really like to work on a product that everybody uses. So think about what are the things that make you passionate or make you interested in a specific company, and that is your objective. Not necessarily, oh, I want to work front end, or I want to work back end, or I want to do ML. Maybe it's I want to work on features that are user facing and everybody knows, or I want to work on making backend services really efficient. I mean, it could be so many things that spark joy. And I want to see that in the objective. What is your passion? And why are you in this field? Why do you want this job? So brainstorm a little bit about that. And that's what should go in your objective. I'm a TA for a CS class. Is it worth putting that in the experience section? Yeah, I would. I mean, you will know better. Add it in there, and if you're running out of space and you think that this project is actually much more important than my TA experience, then leave the project and not the TA experience. You'll know once you have things in there. Yeah, that's my advice. Layoffs. Oh my God, it's awful. Yes. Okay. So I always know that this question is coming because we definitely are having a really turbulent time in the field, and I have my own theories. So these are opinions. I think that some companies, and I've worked for them, maybe grow too fast, maybe invest in too many, not vanity projects, but projects that you just don't know if they're going to pan out, right? And when times are good, sometimes you know, those projects grow in numbers and maybe nobody's keeping track of the fact that we're going way over the number of, we don't know if they're going to pan out projects, incubation projects. And then when times are bad and that money influx is not what it used to be, we have to, you know, as a company, think of the bottom line and cut. And I think that the lack of planning sometimes can unfortunately affect the employment of many individuals, and I feel horrible. I have many friends that have lost their jobs in the last week and the last months, and but my friends are my age, so we all have been through this at some point or another, so we're not terribly scared. We're like, okay, well, it's time to take a little bit of time off and reconnect with my family and my hobbies and refuel, and in a few months I'll go apply and find another job, because there still are jobs out there. There are people hiring, even if the big ones are having massive layoffs. There's plenty of other companies that are hiring, so it is not a great time for sure, but hiring is still happening. So yeah, that's what I have to say about that. But I hope we learn from this experience, and big companies are a little bit more measured in how they grow and how they invest in incubations. I'm sure that's not the full story. I'm not a VP or executive suite person in any of these companies, but from where I sit, that's my opinion. But don't get discouraged. People are hiring. It might be a little harder. It might not be the big companies that you want to work for your first internship or first full-time job. That's okay. You can always make your way there eventually, if that is what you want. All right, in the job description, sometimes there's some years of experience in blah, even if it's entry-level positions. I don't know. I mean, this really depends on the company and the person writing the job description, and I cannot guess what they're trying to get out of here. I would still apply. Right? If in doubt, apply. And you know, and you can highlight maybe in the objective, I do have school experience in blah, or side project experience in blah. That's okay. I would still apply if you're not 100% sure what they mean. That's okay. And sometimes we require some experience, but then we see other stuff in the candidate's resume or when we meet them, and then we realize, well, I don't care about that thing, that bullet I put in the job description. They have so much more to offer on these other things. So you go ahead and apply and show them what you can do for them. How can I find companies that sponsor for a job visa? I don't know. Usually, some companies will be extra clear if in order to apply, you already have to be a resident or citizen. But the opposite is harder to see explicitly, right? Like, I don't think companies go out of their way to say in their website, we sponsor visas. Unfortunately, usually it's the big ones. The bigger the company, the more likely. These might be more of a word of mouth type. I don't know, unless somebody nice is collecting this information in a website somewhere. You're gonna have to do some Googling to find out if the company you want to apply for does sponsor visas or not. Yeah, I don't think I don't know of a centralized repository of that data. So it might mean that you'll have to, for every company you apply for, you might need to do your own research. Oh, look, somebody said buyvisajobs.com is a good reference. Well, there you go. There is a centralized location. So thank you for helping each other. That's fabulous. All right. My undergrad was in, what is GIS? The acronym is failing me. Is this Geographic Information Systems? Global Geography? I think I know what you mean. Yes, okay, Geographic Info Systems, perfect, thank you. And master's is in computer science with no professional software development experience. You know, there's people out there that would be very interested in your GIS background, for sure. So, you know, just put yourself out there, even if you don't have software development experience in the real world. Now, hopefully you have enough software development experience as a student that you know how to code and you know your data structures, because you kind of need to know those things if you want a software engineering internship or perfect or full-time job. So I know applications, you can end up applying to so many and feel like there's no open doors anywhere. And part of it is because the competition is tough and there's a lot of applications out there. But for an internship for this summer might be really hard to land at this stage. Usually, unfortunately, at least the big companies, they start their search a year and more in advance. So I remember I was trying to send some of my students in the fall of 2022. I was trying to send some of my students to some connections of mine, and they were all telling me, no, we already hired all of our interns for 2023. I'm like, what? You're done searching? Yep, we're done. And the reason is because, yeah, a lot of that recruitment happens way earlier than we would like. But don't despair. Some companies might get new influx, new needs, and open positions now, but the probability is lower for sure. But keep looking for things that might open up. And again, it's really hard to get an interview when you're applying online. The best way is to career fair, which probably is off season for that. I don't know. Get a referral. Ask your friends, get a referral. That is another way of doing it. Look at your LinkedIn. If you have any friends of friends that work in the company that you want to apply to, you need those personal connections, because applying online is not going to do it. It's just too competitive. Not competitive, but it's just the volume. The volume is crippling. So yeah, you need a personal connection. And so since you're not going to do this for 100 and different companies, you're going to have to make a list of the ones that you really care about that seem to have internship openings, and try to figure out how to get a contact through your network or through referrals to get that phone call, right? To do the first screen. Applying online doesn't yield as many results as one would want. How was my work-life balance in big tech? Sometimes really good, sometimes really bad. And a lot of it depended on me setting boundaries. So I do have something to say about the subject. You have to learn early on about setting your own boundaries. If you don't set your own boundaries, then you're in for a world of hurt. Nobody's going to say, don't work more. Don't stay late. You know, don't take your laptop home and keep working through the weekend. They might not even know that you're doing that. Your manager would have no idea. And if you have a seasoned and good manager, they might ask about your workload in every one-on-one and ask if things are okay, if you feel that you have a handle on your commitments and the time and the effort, because they don't want to burn you out, right? It is in their best interest that you are in it for the marathon. And it's not it's a marathon, not a sprint. They would say that your manager would want to make sure that you are spending enough time refueling yourself, disconnecting, taking time off. Taking time off is so important, so that you don't burn out. Because if you burn out, then we have to hire somebody else, and we don't want that. We want you. So, but it is a personal decision to how much you work and how efficiently you work too. And this is hard in the first few years to figure out the right combination, to also figure out what is worth doing and what is worth not doing, and discussing and bringing this back in a constant conversation with your manager about priorities. Is this a high priority? Is this a low priority? Can I drop this in favor of this? you should always be having those conversations. And if you're open about it, you won't burn out. So it really is a discipline that comes from within, and focusing on having outside hobbies and activities and recharging opportunities, and always take your time off. This is what I would tell my employees, and it's amazing. Some people just didn't want to take their time off, and then they're complaining that they're burning out. And I'm like, well, I can't help you. I'm not going to book your vacation because I'm your manager, not your travel agent. Take your time off once you get it, please. It's important. Let's see. Should we always include a customized cover letter? Not necessarily. If your application requires it, yes. Otherwise, I would say no. Julia, are we out of time?
Beatriz, we are at 7:30. I think there were just one or two more questions in the chat. If you just want to finish those, that would be good. And then I think we're all set.
All right. Yeah, let's take a look. Undergraduate student, better to get shallow experience in many fields, or is it better to choose a field? It's up to you. What do you want to do? Do you want to be a generalist, or do you want to be a specialist? We have room for both. So that's why I don't have a specific piece of advice for that one. It really depends on you. I think it is too late to apply for summer internships because I believe this is a numbers game. Most positions were filled last fall because most companies that do have a healthy internship program hire really, really early on. Could you still get one? Yes. Will it be much harder to get one? Absolutely. But it's not the end of the world if you don't get an internship. Find other things to do. There's probably some independent research projects or some side project or learning JavaScript if that's what you want to do. There's many things you can do to continue to improve on your skills and add to your resume, even if you don't land an internship. Networking, building, yeah, that's you guys just are adding more questions. Oh, thank you as well.
Yeah. I was wondering, there is one question that if you could just take about a minute or so and talk about that, and it's the cover letters. If they should include customized cover letters, maybe not so much at the career fair because they're not looking at them there, but if you're doing your own.
I think generally no, unless the application asks for one. But I could be wrong, but usually people that are looking at hundreds of applications kind of want the content of the cover letter in that 2-sentence objective at the top. Again, it depends on the application. If it does say include a cover letter, please by all means include a cover letter. But I think at least everywhere I've worked and hired, we didn't require them, and we probably wouldn't have the time to read them. So that's just personal experience. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you for being with us today. You've just provided a wealth of information here, and we just really appreciate it. I'll be sending out a copy of this recording, and we also have last year's recording, which is on CS Source website, and I'll include that as well. So Beatriz, thank you so much. And students, thank you for participating in this. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Best of
luck. Is February 6th. All right. Thanks, everybody. Night.